Today we are gonna be reading Hyperfocus book for 15 minutes. Hyperfocus by Chris Bailey. So let's begin. Hyperfocus. How to work less to achieve more. I'm writing these words over the sounds of clanging cutlery and muffled conversation at a small dinner in Kingston, Ontario, Canada. I've always been a fan of people watching. There's so much to take in: how they dress, walk, converse, and act when they are either around or not around others. Has a busy cafe or as a dinner at a dinner like this. It's fun to see personalities collide like particles in an accelerator. To observe a guy's personality change when he switches from talking to his friend to chatting up to a waitress. To watch the personalities of waiters shift when serving each table, adapting to large families, young couples, and focusing on other people. I have made a lot of observation about what those people are focusing on in any given moment. We are all focusing on something, even if we are just lost in our internal thoughts. Let's take a glance through the dinner. I turn my attention first to the two 20 something girls at the table to my left, who are mostly focusing on their smartphones instead of each other. Between about texting, they flip their phones face down on the table. It seems it's a pretty pointless gesture. They have picked them back up 30 seconds later. While I can't make out their every word, I can tell they are skimming the surface of the conversation they could be having. They are with each other in person, but their attention is elsewhere. Or take the couple across the room. They are engrossed in conversation fueled by hot coffee and buttermilk pancakes. They were engaged in relatively quiet small talk when they arrived, but their conversation soon became more animated. Unlike the girls, the couple has focused only on each other since sitting down. A catchy Ed Sheeran song comes on over the restaurant speakers, and my attention is drawn to the two guys sitting a few tables over from the couple. One of them subtly taps his foot to the beat while his friend orders. The foot tapper is presumably spending his attention across three things: the song, what his friend is ordering, and his own breakfast decision. After he orders the three egg expresses, when the server asks how he like his eggs prepared, he directs his attention inward, seemingly recalling how he usually takes them. He orders scrambled at the bar. A few strangers making idle conversation while watching last night's football highlights. I find it especially fascinating that millions of people around the world, including these three guys, are fixated on an 11-inch piece of tanned cowhide. As I watch, one of the guys cooks his head loose in thought, then though in a shock wave as though a shock wave was traveling through his body. He rushes to capture an idea in his pocketed notebook while he was lost in daydreaming, and to the tune of football highlights, an insight struck from out of the blue. He had a eureka moment. Or take me sitting here with my laptop this morning as I sip coffee and nibble home fries. I've been able to focus more deeply on my work and have more energy to burn. My morning's medication may have helped. Find I am able to write more words when I take part in this ritual. I left my phone at home as I could write free, distraction free, and so my mind could rest on the walk to the dinner and wander. As I'll discuss later. Disconnecting is one of the most powerful ways to speak new and innovative ideas. The music playing on the restaurant speaker is catchy but not enough to be distracting. I am not here for the soundtrack though, and also close this dinner over my favorite cake because there's no Wi-Fi. Constant connectivity is one of the worst disruption to the focus and productivity. Constant connectivity to one of the worst. As the last few paragraphs demonstrate, I am a bit distracted by the environment and the people's it's hosting, but they're serving as good food fodder for the introduction. Fodder for the introduction. This restaurant scene is a handy illustration of a revelation I had. A while back, attention is all around us. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Everyone awake on the planet is this one moment. In this one moment, whether they are eating breakfast, working, or spending time with their family, is focused on something. Attention is the backdrop against which we live our lives. Wherever we go, whatever we do, even if we are just noticing the thoughts in our head. It has been a few years since I first began to explore how we can not only focus better but also think more clearly. While this is tough to admit, especially as someone who was making his living as a productivity productivity expert, I started to notice my own increased distraction, especially as I accumulated more devices. I had never been so busy. While accomplishing a little, I had grown restless with boredom and lack of stimulation and was trying to cram as much into every moment as I could. I know that my brain never functioned well when I was trying to multitask, but also think more clearly. While this is tough to admit, especially as someone who is making distracted, especially I got restless boredom, a lack of stimulation, and was trying to cram as much as no. Working with my email client phone and my smartphone on my desk was simply more appealing than trying to concentrate on one or two simple things. For me, this book was born out of necessity. I wrote it because I needed it. When I got excited by a new idea, I typically order dozen of books on it and nerd out about the topic. Focus has been my most recent fascination. This includes how we can be best manage the distractions around us, multitask more effectively if that's possible, battle our resistance to focusing on tasks. that makes us procrastinate, and also better unfocus so that we can genuinely relax and recharge. In my reading, I found an awful lot of information, advice, often contradictory, that was fun to read. Ultimately, didn't help me progress my work and life forward. I then turned to actual scientific research, scores of academic studies, and decades of documentation dedicated to learning how we best focus. As I carefully read every study I could find, the focus folder on my computer became massive. Massive. I assumed tens of thousands of words of notes and began to identify the most practical tactical lessons from them. I started speaking to the world's foremost attention researchers to get to the bottom of why we get distracted so easily and discover how we can get our stubborn minds to focus in a world of distraction. And I started to experiment with the research myself to see if it was actually possible to get a grip on my focus. What I discovered completely changed not only how I work but also how I live my life. I began to see focus as not only a contributor to my productivity but also a factor in my overall well being. Surprisingly, I learned that one of the best practices for fostering my creativity and productivity are learning how to unfocus. By paying attention to nothing in particular and letting my mind wander as I did on my way to the Kingston dinner, I found that I became better at making connections between ideas and coming up with new ones. I also found that we encounter more distractions today than we have in the entire history of humanity. Studies show we can work for an average of just 40 seconds in front of computer before we are either distracted or interrupted. Needless to say, we do our best work when we attend to a task for a lot longer than 40 seconds. I went from viewing multitasking as a stimulating work hack to regarding it as a trap of continuous interruption. While trying to do more tasks simultaneously, we prevent ourselves from finishing any one task of significance. And I began to discover that by focusing deeply on just one important thing at a time, hyper focusing, we became the most productive version of ourselves. Above all else, I began to view attention as the most important in most important ingredient we can add if we are to become most productive, creative and creative and happy at work and at home. When we invest our limited attention intelligently and deliberately, we focus more deeply and think more clearly. This is an essential skill in today's world when we are so often in distracting environments doing brain heavy knowledge work. This book takes you on a guided tour through my exploration of the subject of focus. I'll share not only the fascinating thing I have learned but also how to actually put those ideas to use in your own life. Productivity research is great but pretty useless when you don't act upon it. In a way, I see hyperfocus as a sort of science help books, one that explains the fascinating research behind how you focus but also bridges those insights with your daily life to explore ways you can manage your attention better to become more productive and creative. The ideas have already changed one life, mine, and I know they can do same for you. On the surface, the results can seem a bit like magic, but magic stops being magic the moment you know how it's done. How to better focus on this book. Reading this book is your first chance to put your focus to the test, and the more attention you can dedicate to it, the more you will get out of the time spent on it. Let's begin on a practical note with 7 ways to focus more deeply while reading. But find a quick comment. If I've learned one thing from my research, it's the productivity is high, personal, everyone is uniquely weird and has different routines. As a result, not all productivity tactics will mesh comfortably with your life. Not to mention the fact that you may simply not want to follow some of the advice I offer. Experiment with as many of these focus tactics as you can and adapt whatever works for you. When your mind is even slightly resting a task, it will look for more novel things to focus on. A smartphone are a great example. They provide an endless stream of bite-sized delicious information for our brain to consume. As I'll discuss later, distraction and interruptions are infinitely easier to deal with before they become a temptation. Start seeing your smartphone for what it really is, productivity black hole. That site in which your that sits in your pocket. To focus on this book, I recommend leaving your that's it, and we'll continue tomorrow.